This is a quick breakdown of my Lightning Arrow Ranger build that's got me through Act 1, 2 and the start of 3 comfortably. It's primarily aimed at newer players who need a bit of help getting to grips with the game and are maybe having a bit of a struggle getting started, and I promise you folks, this will give you an incredibly strong start once you get going with it. Keep in mind that this is not a fully min-max build, it's a simple, punchy, high damaging leveling build that will allow you to blow through early levels quickly with really good clear speed, and you'll be leveling really fast, and that's why this is so effective. I'll be updating this video as I progress, so be sure to drop the video a like and sub to the channel to keep informed. I'm also streaming on YouTube and Twitch, so jump in and come ask any questions. Now, let's get into it. First up, I'm going to give a basic overview of the skills. I don't want to overload you, so I'm going to be quite brief with this, but the main thing you want to be using, folks, is Lightning Arrow, and you want to be socketing it with Pierce and Chain. This is key because what it will do is it will drastically improve your AoE clear speed, and that is compounded even further by using Lightning Rod and socketing that with Scatter Shot, so you get more for every cast you do, and also Magnified Effect, so you have a larger area of effect. What this does is it allows the chain effects from the Lightning Arrow to chain to the Lightning Rods, so you can basically create huge areas, and I'll put some on the screen now, huge areas of lightning damage, absolutely insane amounts of clear potential. This is what you will be doing in the early levels when you're playing through Act 1 and you're still sort of building your character up. These are the two skills that I would recommend that you combo together. You then will of course be using Escape Shot to get out of trouble. I don't really use it that much anymore because I'm just able to stand there and absolutely annihilate everything. Once we get a little bit further through, we have a few other skills that we're going to start using. We have, for example, Stormcaller Arrow. This allows us to shock enemies very quickly. It does a massive amount of shock chance, 800%, and it converts 100% of the physical damage to lightning damage. Again, really, really strong in terms of just getting that lightning damage output in, and it's so good against bosses, and we'll talk about bosses a little bit later in the video because that can be catching people out. We also use Barrage. This gives you a second cast, essentially, especially if you're using things like Second Wind. This thing is just so powerful, so I'd recommend you socket Second Wind, Premeditation. And this is where it starts to get really punchy and interesting, and this is where the build really opens up. Electrocuting Arrow puts a rod into enemies, and it makes all lightning damage begin to build up electrocution, which eventually results in a stun. So when you're fighting bosses or more difficult rare enemies, this is an absolute must. It will CC the hell out of them. It's really, really effective. And you pair this with Voltaic Mark, marks targets for 8 seconds, and if you kill that target that is marked within that window, when it dies, it will explode with a lightning nova, and this has a 50% higher chance to shock, and the shock has 30% increased effect on the marked enemy. So this is great for encouraging those shocks to get off, and it absolutely obliterates the screen. And if you've got Herald of Thunder, which is an absolute must pick in my opinion, is the icing on the cake, because the way this works, once you kill a shocked enemy, so we're pushing for that shocking obviously, attacks will cause subsequent attack hits to release lightning bolts, which does attack damage to all surrounding enemies. You just have such ridiculous synergy with such a simple setup. It's absolutely fantastic. I'll quickly go over some of the support gems that I missed. So with Herald of Thunder, I've only actually got Concentrated Effect. I hadn't actually realized that I didn't have 2 in there, so that shows you that this isn't min-maxed, and it does just work. Concentrated Effect on Herald of Thunder. On Voltaic Mark, I've got Conduction, so supported skills have 100% more chance to shock. Lovely. And also Lasting Shock, so that increases the shock duration. So we're just basically pushing that chance to shock even further there. Electrocuting Arrow, we've got Martial Tempo, which just makes the attack speed quicker because it can be quite a slow skill to fire. It's probably not min-maxed in that regard. That's just what I've put in there for the time being. And also, supported skills have 40% more effect duration. That just means that it's going to stay up longer and allow us to get the damage in there to get the shock off quicker. So I'm just going to show you how this works, folks. I'm going to just use Lightning Rods and Lightning Arrow to start with, because that's what you'll be using in Act 1. You've seen me throw them down. Look at that. Look at the AoE. Absolutely insane. I do have Voltaic... Sorry, I do have Herald of Thunder on there, but you get the idea. Now, if we're going to start using all the other stuff, I'll put the mark on. Look at that. Look at that. It just absolutely destroys. Here we go again. Absolutely crazy. And we're not even using the other skills that we've gone over. This is literally Voltaic Mark, Herald of Thunder, Lightning Arrow, and the rods. So here we go. Now I'm going to use Electrocuting Arrow. That shocked them straight away, actually. Again, do it there. Lightning rods down, mark them. They shocked straight away. You saw the guy vibrating there. It's just so effective. It's actually better to use Electrocuting Arrow when you're in boss fights. Look, he's doing it again. When you're in a boss fight or fighting a rare pack, elite enemies, that kind of thing. But for the most part, you're just going to be using Lightning Rods, Voltaic Mark, and just obliterating everything. It's super effective. Now, in terms of the passive tree, I will show you the route I went and how I've built this character. It isn't min-maxed, folks, and I'm sure there are people out there who have figured out a much quicker way of perhaps getting to where I'm at the moment. So if you've got any suggestions, please do just sound off in the comments below. But really quickly, this is the shape of the tree. I started there, went for all the projectile damage ones across there. And then when I got to about here, I realised I was getting hit too much, so I actually went back on myself and got some evasion rating. I needed some defence, so I sort of covered this area first, and then I chose to go this way first. I went down here with Dex, Intellect, just so I could wear the gear. I then went to this area where I was getting elemental damage increase, the lightning resistance pen, and that has made a huge difference, just getting those 4 nodes there to the damage output. And then I also went up here and took the increased damage for each type of ailment on the enemy. Now, that sounds a bit weird, but I've put Envenom on my basic attack, and that poisons the enemy for a set amount of time, and that actually increases the damage by another 15% once you've got them electrocuted as well. So it's quite a nice little mechanic there. And then I was going to head down to this area of the tree, and this is where I will end up eventually, because these trees here, the bow one and the crit one, and there's also the herald damage one that I'm liking the look of as well. So I will ultimately go down to this side of the tree, but in the meantime, what I actually did was I came down here and wanted to get these lightning nodes. So I went down there and I grabbed increased lightning damage, increased lightning damage, increased lightning damage, electrocute build up, shock build up. Shocking hits also have 50% chance to also shock enemies in a 1.5 meter radius. That's really cracked. And also the electrocute build up increase of 50% against shocked enemies and 50% increased shock chance against electrocuted enemies. Really effective and synergizes for obvious reasons with this build. And I'm currently here just getting some extra crit chance. And then I think I'm probably going to hang around here a little bit and get these projectile buffs here. And then also look around here, perhaps in this heavy ammunition area for more bow damage. There's quite a few ways you can go. In terms of the ascendancy, I've only got the first 2 points. And I've gone for Tailwind because it gives you pretty insane buffs. I'll just show you this really quickly. Tailwind is a stacking buff which grants 1% increased movement speed, 3% increased skill speed, and 15% increased evasion rating for 10 seconds per stack. So you can stack that 10 times. That means 10% increased movement speed, 30% increased skill speed, and 150% increased evasion rating until you get hit, then you lose them all. You get this every time you cast a skill or shoot your bow, so it's crazy. Absolutely cracked. In terms of the gear, in terms of the gear, I'm just going to go over mine really quickly just to give you a taste of what I've done. I've chased after evasion rating as much as I can, just because it multiplies with all those percentages I showed you in the passive tree and with Tailwind. So we've got maximum life and resistance on an evasion rating chest. I would fully recommend that you stack as much resistance and as much max life as possible as a priority when you first start out, folks. I've also done that with my helm, although it's not that great. I've got max life and mana and crit chance 16% there, which is pretty cool. My amulet is +1 to all projectile skills, 10% increased evasion rating. Nothing too exciting, but that +1 to all projectile skills is nice. The belt, absolute garbage. I've just got it because it's +34 max life. The boots, absolute garbage. +20% cold resist, 65 to evasion rating. I got these nice legendary gloves, 26% increased crit damage bonus, and my base critical hit chance is up by 8%. I think it would be usually It would usually be 5%, but this puts it up to 8, which is just a really nice thing to have. And then the rings, these are pretty cool, actually. I'm quite happy with these. This one, 26% increased lightning resistance, adds 1 to 12 lightning damage to attacks, accuracy rating, max life 66, really tasty. And of course, on the other one, another lightning resistance ring with more lightning damage, accuracy rating. The cast speed's meh, but that'd be better if it was attack speed, and some fire resistance. So just really trying to get as much damage and resistance, so trying to balance that survivability and DPS output as much as possible. But this, folks, is where you need to start really paying attention and thinking. So what you want to do as soon as possible, you want to get a bow that rolls with increased physical damage if possible. The higher, the better. I got really lucky and this one dropped with 78% increased physical damage on it already. What I then did was use 2 Artificer Orbs to give this bow 2 sockets, and then from there I put 2 Iron Runes into my weapon, which gives us 20% increased physical damage for both. So that's an increase of 40% increased physical damage. So this bow, with my quick maths, is doing 128 increased physical damage. Really, really effective. And this particular style of bow is called a dual string bow, and you'll see that the bow fires an additional arrow. This effectively just skyrockets your DPS because you've got 2 shots now every single time you're using it. And if you stack this whilst using barrage, it basically makes the attack repeat itself. So you're getting 4 shots then for the price of 1 attack, which is absolutely insane. I am going to visit frenzy charges as I progress with the build as well, and that will really make barrage skyrocket as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that video, folks. And the quiver is pretty simple and straightforward. 14% increased damage with bow skills and 19% increased critical hit chance with some life on hit, both on the bow and on the quiver. Just makes the life regen that little bit better, folks.